Sorry. Hi, my name is Grant. Today I'll be explaining the 3 arguments on how God could be real and, yeah, let's get into it. So the first argument is a theological argument, the design argument. So what I was basically thinking of, how to explain this kind of good, is so you and me are human beings, right? That was part of evolution by monkeys, right? And the chances of that happening is very slim, right? How we're so intellectually smart that we can build rocket ships and send them into the moon, and how we could use science, how we can comprehend science, and how we made science, right? It's crazy to think about, right? Also, I want to use this pen as an example, right? I let it drop, right? Why didn't it go up? Why didn't it go sideways? Oh, because gravity, right? So those things are crazy to think about, because if a universe happened by chance, how would those things be perfectly aligned, right? How would the universe make 1,000 planets, and our planet is the one with humans on it that have water? If you think about it like that, it's just crazy to think about. Also, say if an archer, I like this example. So say if an archer shot an arrow, right? Well, the arrow didn't get there by itself, right? It had to have somebody to actually aim and shoot it, because the arrow is a piece of wood. It doesn't think. So it's basically nothing. So for that to happen, somebody would have to put that in place for it to actually happen. Moving on to the cosmological argument. I like to use the Big Bang Theory for this one. So the Big Bang Theory is basically a singularity was in the universe until it exploded and it caused everything in this universe to happen, right? But how would that happen? I could use a theological argument in the cosmological argument. How could that happen by chance, right? Again, somebody would have to put that in place for it in order for it to happen. Like an all-knowing deity and a deity outside of time for it to happen. Because we could also argue that God is outside of time. God is everything. God is all-knowing. God is not time itself, but it's outside of the timeline, where God never had a birthday. God was never born. God is past, present, and future, right? Also, let's say, I'll use another example. If I have a line of dominoes, right, and it just stays there. I mean, it can't move without something moving it, right? And I flick it, and it rolls all the way down there. So I could use that. Basically, God made the Big Bang happen in order for planets to be created, then stars, then the sun, and the light, right? So I mean, you could argue that the Big Bang just happened by chance, but again, something would have to cause that for it to happen. And still, scientists are very stuck on that to this day. And then, sorry, I'm running a little over time. The ontological argument is, I was very stuck on this argument for 30 minutes. So the best thing I could come up with is the word God means God is real. So, sorry. So how do I explain this better? God is a maximum ceiling deity. God is the greatest thing that ever happened, the greatest thing ever possible, right? So say if I'm an atheist and I don't believe in, I know God, I know what God is, but I don't think he's real. That's basically, they're contradicting themselves, because God is everything. So they're contradicting themselves by saying it, all grateful deity is not real. Therefore, they can think of a powerful deity that is greater than the greatest thing that ever happened, which is completely false. I mean, that's the best explanation I can kind of put up with that. Also, people can imagine, I actually contradicted itself kind of a little bit, how I want to move this in. I like the, sorry. The cosmological argument the most, because a creator had to make a creator, but people say, who created God? Well, God is an uncausable creation, therefore meaning that God was always here. God is outside the timeline. People can't make God, because God is the greatest thing possible to ever happen, right? But the ontological argument is kind of iffy for me, because you can kind of contradict it a lot by saying like, oh, what if I, like the argument I just said, right? What if I imagine me having a six pack? I wouldn't wake up tomorrow and I would have a six pack. You can imagine something like, well, imagine God doesn't, not surreal, but you can't really do that with God, because God is the greatest thing that ever actually happened, and the greatest thing possible, kind of, and he's the maximum ceiling. So you can't get higher than God, because God is literally the highest ceiling you could possibly reach. Like nothing can ever be reached to him or her or the deity. The theological argument was, I liked it, because I mean, something has to be like the design argument, because like what are the chances of us even being here and us drinking a glass of water, or like me having fruit? Like it's a very slim chance. Sorry, I went over like 2 minutes, but yeah, I liked all the arguments. If you actually thought about them, like they're actually all good arguments, but the one I could contradict the most is a ontological argument, because you can just imagine something without it being true, but since it's God, you can't argue against God not being real, because God is the greatest thing ever possible, kind of. That's what I kind of got from it. But the cosmological argument, it used science, and you couldn't really contradict that. You could still contradict that, but not as much as you can contradict the ontological argument. Sorry, I went for like 3 minutes. Thank you.